Welcome to another episode of the Mind, Body and Pipeline podcast. This week we have Dave Callan. Dave and I met about 12 months ago. We were introduced through a mutual connection. Dave's career is really interesting, having worked within sport at the likes of Manchester United and Team Sky. He is now a coach consultant. He works with business leaders to help them unlock areas of growth, whether that be professionally or personally. Outside of work, but closely linked to everything he does, Dave is an ultra marathon runner. He's a triathlete. He's a dad of two and is very, very active on a consistent basis, week in, week out. He structures and schedules his time. I think everybody will find this particularly interesting. Dave has a unique view of personal performance. He did a talk at our event in February of this year, and he's been invited on a number of other pods and asked to speak at other events as a byproduct of that. So everybody will really enjoy this. Dave, thanks again for joining.
Thank you, Guy. Thanks for having me.
You're more than welcome. Looking forward to this. We've had several conversations. We've been introduced by a mutual connection. So I know a little bit about your business now, a little bit about your career history. I was introduced to you because of your fitness journey and some of the endeavors that you've taken on, particularly this year. But for people watching that might not be as familiar with you or your work, can you give us a quick intro about what you do from a business perspective?
Sure, yeah. Well, my new business actually is very new, guys. So maybe a little bit of context before I talk about Onto as a coaching platform. So I guess from a professional standpoint, I had a long career, sort of 20-year career climbing the corporate ladder in many ways. Started off in financial services back in the day after university, and then I took probably a less orthodox route and went into sports organizations. So I went to work for Manchester United for a number of years, and it pains me to say this, but I was actually at Manchester United last time we won the Premier League. I think it was back in 2013 under Sir Alex. So I spent many years at Manchester United in their highly successful commercial team. When I joined the club, I think they were doing maybe 100 million in revenue commercially. That was grown to over 250 million in commercial revenues when I left the club, which was just after Louis van Gaal was the manager at the time, just after he won the FA Cup. So I was in the commercial partnerships team there, driving the commercial value of the Manchester United brand. I then went into work for what was Team Sky, so the elite level professional cycling team. And I was there when Team Sky won their 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th Tour de France. I was there when we won the first Monument. They won the Giro d'Italia twice. They won the Vuelta whilst I was there, and I was there when they won. I think that we held all 3 Grand Tours actually whilst I was at the team. The team then transitioned to become Team Ineos and then the Ineos Grenadiers after a Jim Ratcliffe takeover. And I was the CMO there, so I was leading the brand of Team Sky, Team Ineos, looking at commercial partnerships, fan engagement, CRM, comms, value creation off the bike. I then took a career move outside of sport and worked for private equity owned travel business for around 3 years. Business in Manchester called Travel Counsellors, probably one of the best kept secrets in travel. Recently just done $1 billion in revenue. I was on the executive leadership, executive board at Travel Counsellors as the customer director. So looking after their marketing functions, looking after the brand, growing the business from a customer standpoint. And I took a recent decision. In fact, it's been just over 7 weeks now, actually, since I've launched my own coaching business. So I've always been into sort of self-development. I became a qualified coach in January this year. And I decided that was a pathway that I wanted to take. So now I'm the founder and performance coach at Onto Consultancy. So I work with highly ambitious, high-performing clients who are looking to unlock levels of performance in their life that they've previously not been able to access through one-to-one coaching solutions, focusing on things like mindset, lifestyle, and empowerment effectively for my clients. So that's the journey that I'm on at the moment from a sort of a career and business standpoint, at least.
Nice. Love it. Love it. And the next question sort of bleeds nicely into health, fitness, wellness. I've got a question that I suppose you can answer as part of the overall answer, or it might be the key part of it. Working within sport, professional services first, then jump to United, then obviously in the Team Sky. Were you into sport and health, fitness before that, or tell us a little bit about the journey, and was being thrust into working within sport a big catalyst, or how's that all connected?
Yeah, it's a good question, Guy. I think I'd always been into sports, at least from a fan perspective, when I was a youngster, right, and played football for most of my youth up until I went to university. And as many people do, when I went to university, I found the distractions that everybody finds at university, going to the pub, going clubbing, females, that type of thing. And my kind of sporting endeavours were put on pause for a little while. When I started to work for Man United, obviously you get inspired by the environment. Okay, so United are always striving for excellence in terms of the delivery of the performance on the pitch, but equally there's a culture of high performance that runs throughout a sports organisation, as you would expect. I'd done a few events by then. I was kind of maybe mid to late 20s when I was at United to start with. And when I was at uni, I'd kind of kicked around a few 10Ks. I think I'd done a half marathon. I'd never really taken it too seriously. I think there was a bit of a pivot really when I was at United, when I started to ride a bike. So I think that was really a moment in time where I started to move away from just competing, at least at a very amateur level, in terms of doing sort of running events. And I started to ride my bike and find other disciplines. And the first triathlon that I did back in the day was probably a moment in time where I kind of reflect on now and say, that was probably a pivotal time when I started to take things a little bit more seriously. But I would probably describe myself, and have done in the past, guys, being, at least I used to be, the Ricky Hatton of triathlon, right? So I'd be up and down with my sort of levels of commitment and performance. I would enter an event and go all in and train for it. But then after the event was done, I'd probably just down tools. I wouldn't train. I'd put on weight. My nutrition would be off. I'd then get frustrated with myself. So I'd then enter another event, and then it would be a little bit of a cycle like that. Things have got a lot more consistent over the past, probably, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years, but it's been a journey, and I'm now in a position where it's just ingrained in my lifestyle.
Yeah, nice. When was that first triathlon? Do you remember?
I want to say it was probably around 2011, 2012. I was on a rally sprint bike, which was, and I didn't even have cleats, like clipping pedals at the time. I did it with a good friend of mine who convinced me to give triathlon a go. I really didn't know what I was doing at the time, but I just thoroughly enjoyed it, and I fell in love with the sport. And I would call myself a triathlete now. So I don't think there's been 12 months that have passed since then where I haven't at least done one triathlon a season. And I'm just off the back of probably one of my most enjoyable years when it comes to sort of mixed discipline sports. I did my PB 70.3 this year over in Montenegro. I got my PB at full distance Ironman in Barcelona this year as well. Nice. And I did a number of other triathlons this year as a build up to those events. So yeah, I think from 2012 onwards, I'd probably call myself a triathlete. Doesn't mean to say that I'm kind of competing at elite level, but that's kind of the sport that I lean into the most, for sure. As long as I've got other stuff going on as well.
Yeah, nice. And since could we call it a switch in 2011, and having that dedication to the sport, or to your own, to setting goals, has that changed the way that you approach work in any way?
I think it's probably a byproduct of me leaning into my health and well-being has 100% been an elevated level of performance in other areas of my life, right? And, as if you were to map my career trajectory, if you like, against my sort of on pitch or on track performance from a sporting standpoint, you would definitely see that there was parallels there in terms of the more I've lent into my health, well-being and fitness and mindset, the better the trajectory was had at work. And I think there's there's reasons for that, the discipline, the clarity of thinking, the routine that you get into, the structure, the goal setting. As soon as you start to see those positive results in areas of your life, you realize that they are transferable across other areas as well. So I got to a position where I was the CMO of Sky and Ineos, and then I was in an executive leadership position at a huge PE-backed travel business. So I'd climbed the ladder from a career standpoint, and during that period, I was definitely investing in myself as an individual. And I think reflecting on it now, I would say that 100% it was definitely the platform that gave me the confidence and the ability to get performance in other areas of my life, for sure.
Yeah. And I guess being surrounded by that sporting culture helped. Have you always had friends, family that were already doing, long distance running, triathlons, or is that something you've had to build within yourself? Have you been surrounded with this sporting culture?
Well, obviously from a professional standpoint, it was, excellence and high performance have been part of the cultures that I've worked in, for sure. So even at, my most recent business, travel counselors were high performance, and excellence was something that went through the business. Obviously at Sky and Ineos, exactly the same, and at Manchester United, the same. So I'd always been kind of pushed as an individual to at least raise my own standards and always strive for personal excellence. Outside of that, I've got a strong friendship group. I've got a small group of individuals who I do my triathlon events with. I say small group, there's 3 of us, but we push each other, and we push each other to a level that has enabled us all to hit numbers and PBs and distances that we would only have dreamt of when we first started. I remember seeing someone who'd done an Ironman when I was first getting into triathlon, and the thought of doing an Ironman it just filled me with fear, anxiety. It filled me with this feeling of I could never do that. That's not for me. And it's only through putting people around me and being inspired by others and community that gave me, I guess, the confidence and the reference point that actually the only thing that was really holding me back was my own limiting beliefs around stuff like that. So I think, to your point, yes, there's been people around me my whole life that have helped push me on. But you've got to seek those individuals as well, guys. Sometimes there's moments in your life where you realize that if you want to elevate yourself, then you need to be around people who you can aspire to be. So leaning into communities, finding new networks, finding people that inspire you and getting close to them is something that can really drive you forward. So there have been moments, I'm not going to lie, in my life where I've had to go out and find these people and connect with people and find new communities, enter new events, find a better coach, find people that I can elevate me, because sometimes people can be like boosters in a rocket, right? They'll get you to a certain level and then they might fall off because they can't go to the places that you want to go to. Yeah. So I'm a big believer that you have to find the right people to put around you to support you and to get you to where you want to be.
Yeah, no, I agree. We talked earlier, didn't we, about that circle of influence that's around you. Because you mentioned community, it's a question I was going to ask probably about half an hour or so, but let's stick there a little bit. Fitness community linking to business opportunity, is that something that has a direct correlation with you? Have you seen it impact your career? Have you seen it impact other people's careers, that community that you've got? Obviously, you've got your 3 mates that drive each other on. Yeah. But wider than that.
Absolutely, yeah. I think there's an element of mystery, I think, around the power of communities. Yeah. Specifically when it comes to elevating things like performance. And if you think about what a community is, it goes beyond just a group of people getting together, right? It goes to shared values. It goes to a feeling of belonging, a feeling of acceptance, a safe environment, a shared understanding of a purpose which is driving you forward. And I've seen the power of community both from a career business standpoint in the past, in the businesses that I've worked in, for sure. And I've also experienced it as an individual as well. I had a period where in fact, it was after I'd done my first Ironman back in 2019. I had a period where I almost had gold medal syndrome, right? So I'd finished the Ironman. It was a massive goal for me at the time. And I went back into the Ricky Hatton mentality. I was basking in the glory of being an Ironman for probably 6 to 9 months. And as a result of it, I started to feel really crappy about myself. I'd put on weight. My nutrition was off. I was feeling tired. Just didn't feel like myself at all. And I had to dial into a community to get me going again. And I found a great community. I was coached by an unbelievable individual, Mark, who I owe a lot to. He stripped my body fat right down, got me in unbelievable shape. I lent into his community of individuals who really, really pushed me forward. And as a result of that, I was again hitting numbers that I hadn't seen before from a performance level. And I would say that the majority of that was down to the fact that I had like-minded individuals around me who had a shared purpose, who had a shared vision, who had shared challenges and could pick me up when I needed to. So I cannot underestimate the value of community when it comes to elevating your own personal performance. I've seen it for others, I've seen it in business, but I'm also talking from individual personal experience as well.
Yeah, nice. No, I'm exactly the same. It's caught me, and I remember as part of the community I'm a part of with the sort of the HIIT classes and the functional fitness gym. I remember going to my first High Rocks in January this year, and as soon as I walked in and I heard that wall of noise, you've been right, and then you've got people, it's almost like a fun run atmosphere, but people look like they're on like mile 18 of the marathon. And it was so discombobulating for the first 15 minutes. I was so up. And then when I sort of calmed down after 20 minutes, knowing that I was racing the next day with my wife as well, I thought, I've got to be involved in this in some way. Like somehow this community, this everybody pushing together, and, some, guys and girls who on the surface didn't look in great shape, tops off, just feeling really body confident. I just absolutely loved it. And I'd never seen anything like it before. And the guys, I mentioned to you previously, there was 24 of us or 23 of us out in Stockholm last week from the gym. Everybody there supporting each other, pushing each other on. And that everybody's training and going through the same things, making the same sacrifices. It's silly season at the moment, isn't it? We're in the middle of December. We're less than a week away from Christmas. The temptation to hit the mince pies and hit the sherry and stuff is there for everybody. But there's a little group of us who are actually training for Manchester Marathon. Training's just started, not for me personally, but for my wife. There's High Rocks Manchester in January, but we're all on this WhatsApp group, all spurring each other on. We're doing a track session on Christmas Eve. I'm going for a run with 2 of them on Christmas Day. It's just, it just makes you feel empowered, doesn't it? And I think it's amazing. And obviously I'm now setting up the events. We've been connected from a business contact of mine, certainly, and you sort of met him more sort of maybe personal level, but sort of definitely a business contact of mine that I've now got to know on a personal level. But that's what you mentioned about shared values is really important, but particularly in partnerships. And we spoke about that. And so we're going off on a tangent, I think, to stay relevant, if you're sort of sticking with me, is that I feel that partnerships work really, really well when you have a shared value. And you and I, when we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, you said to me, when United were building, lots of the CEOs, the managing directors of the sponsors for Manchester United were United fans.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think, my history, if you like, or my history in business at least, a lot of it was focused on building mutually valuable partnerships from a commercial standpoint. And the easiest way to build a successful partnership is to sell on values and emotion. And once you've got values and emotion, a connection there, then the rational side of it, of a partnership, and the commercial side of it is the easy bit. Once you get a connection with someone and there's a shared purpose there, and you can connect on a much deeper level. And I think it goes for human connection as well as a commercial partnership. I think it's important that anybody who is looking to drive commercial value through partnerships doesn't get distracted too much by what's this going to output for me commercially? I think that's a byproduct of finding someone who you can share a purpose with and share values with, and that the rest of it will work organically. And that was something that I saw in abundance throughout my career in sports marketing. When you think about some of the partnerships that run through sports at the moment, you can see the ones that work, and the ones that work are where brands come together with rights holders who are just in it for the same reason, and that's where the magic happens. And I think it's the same with community, right? When a community comes together, as long as you've got the right spirit there and the values are aligned, and you're all sharing the same ambition and sharing the same challenges and sharing the same goals, then the rest of it is just a byproduct, right? I think it's so empowering. And as I start my new business from a coaching standpoint, one of the philosophies that I've got for Onto is to make sure that I'm surrounding myself with the right people. I'm an individual founder at the moment. I'm only 7 weeks into my journey, but I'm constantly trying to reach out now to new networks and my own network to make sure that I'm reaching out to like-minded people, which is one of the reasons why we met, Guy, right? Is just through that outreach and making sure that you're connecting with people who speak the same language as you. So it's all super valuable.
I know, and that's my desire. I've had the consultancy for 4.5 years and loved it. The last two clients on the consulting side have found me due to health, fitness, and wellness, and some posting that I've been doing on LinkedIn. And we just share so many common values. One of them's stopped drinking and found me because of a non-drinking podcast, and we started chatting, and I was telling him about the events, talking about what I learned from the consultancy and how they got to the events, and he just went, "Can we talk about that consultancy?" And now we're doing some work together. And I suppose you and I are both fortunate to be able to make those choices. You've been through the corporate world, climbed that ladder, and now you're saying, right, I'm going to set a business up and work with people that I have shared values with, I've got similar passions, all that type of thing. And I've got to that stage as well, where the consultancy and what it was for 4 years, allowed me to now build the events part of the business out, but now start to hand select who I work with, who I partner with. And it's a nice place to be, isn't it? And what an amazing way to do business development. Surrounded by people who you like, enjoy their company, they're doing something similar, they're aspirational to you, you find them, or they find you aspirational, whichever way it works. What a lovely way to do BD.
Yeah, and more power to you, Guy.
Just at the beginning of it, we'll see. You're setting up the consultancy. Yours naturally had very busy roles at United and at Sky and at the travel company, at everyone. How do you fit in fitness into your routine? And you can even talk weekly, how you block it in and what you do if you want. Have you found something that really works for you?
I mean, I have, yeah. I mean, I've always had a busy career. I've got a busy personal life as well outside of that with 2 young kids. I've got an ambitious wife who is doing her own training as well. And I think for us, I know this word gets used a lot in self-development, but it becomes a non-negotiable, right? So when you have a health and fitness value and you've got a blueprint there, everything else has to fit around it. That's how I view it, Guy, because if I'm not able to perform or get my fitness in or get my wellness in or look after me, then I'm unable to turn up for everybody else. So we spoke a little bit before the podcast. I think there was a bit of a mindset shift on my part as well with regards to how do I go about this, because I used to think that, or I used to hold this belief, if you like, that it could be a selfish act. So it's a selfish act for me to put so much time and effort into myself, both from a physical and a wellness standpoint. But actually, when I look at it from a kind of nice view, if you like, and tap into the actual human part of my brain, it's not a selfish act at all. In fact, it's part of who I need to be and part of me as an individual. And by having that mindset, it just becomes part of your program, right? So I've worked with coaches a lot of the time. I have programs that I follow that are flexible. So I'll quite often, mean early mornings. It might mean training during the day. It might mean training in the evening. But what it does mean is that there is training involved. Okay, so I will only ever have days off if I've got a prescribed rest day. And if I've got a prescribed rest day, quite often I'll try and sneak in a session anyway, because it makes me feel better. It drives those sort of well-being emotions. It drives engagement. It makes me feel accomplished. It gives me meaning and purpose. So it's not how do I fit it in. I think the question is, why wouldn't I fit it in? You know, I don't see it as a burden on my time. I see it as that's the starting point. So everything else has to fit around it. And it depends on what I'm training for as well, Guy, because there's certain events that take a lot more time and effort and volume, and sometimes you have to make sacrifices around that. So, you know, I've been doing events where it's been 6 or 7 hours worth of training at a weekend, which is a lot of time, which basically means I have to go to bed early and I have to get up really early. And on occasions, I might have to say no to things because it's not going to enable me to get the sessions in. But that's fine, and I'm cool with that. So I think it's just around having a plan, being disciplined with it, making sure that your mindset is not how can I in, it's this is happening, how can we make life work, and getting the support of your loved ones as well. So I think, you know, it's really important that you have clear and effective communication with the people around you. So it's difficult, specifically if you've got children and you've got other people who want to be doing stuff. We spoke before the podcast around my wife is training for Manchester Marathon, which is in April, and it's going to be her first marathon. It's going to give me a lot of personal satisfaction to see her do really, really well at that. So it doesn't mean that my training stops. It just means that I will allow her to flourish and let her take the limelight of the sessions on the Sunday morning or the Saturday morning if she needs to, and I will kind of be flexible with my plan around that as well. So there's no easy answer to your question, but I think that the reframe of the question is not how do you fit it in, because I don't see it as fitting it in. I just see it as it will happen. How does everything else work around it?
Yeah, no, I had a chat with one of those clients I was talking about, the two that came on recently, you know, due to some shared values. And one of them was talking, he was asking me what a throwaway question, what did you do this morning? And I started to tell him, well, I was up, I did 3 hours of work, then I went to a high rocks class, then I had like an ice bath and a sauna. And he's like, how do you fit that in? And I just screen shared. And I said, look at all the bright orange. And they're things that are like me time. And they could be myself and my wife going, out for dinner. It could be, it's absolutely anything that is to do with something positive for my mind or body. And he said, God, how did you get to that? And I said, well, I just prioritized it. It goes like, I'll do January, bright orange will go in as best I can in the next few days. And that's it, non-negotiable. And I do some things that are in traditional working hours, like a high rocks class at 9:30. It's because, you know, I want to do a bit of work before that. And, sometimes it's 6 a.m., sometimes it's 5:30. Like you said, it's a bit flexible. And I try and mix it up as well to keep me entertained. When you're up 6 a.m., 5:15 straight into a class, needs to change it up a little bit. But for me, I'm similar to you. It is non-negotiable, but it goes in the diary. And it can be moved and shifted, particularly the track exercises or something. If something comes up and I was planning to do it on a Wednesday lunchtime, it gets shifted to a Wednesday evening, and I've got to go and do it inside at the gym on the treadmill rather than doing it outside of the class. But like you said, it just gets done. But that's taken ages to sort of grind that in. But
I think you make a really interesting point there, and I challenge a lot of my clients who will come to me and they will say, I just don't have time for X, Y, or Z. Okay, so a reframe of that, Guy, would be basically means the same thing. I am not prioritizing X, Y, or Z. So I don't have time to train. I am not prioritizing training. It means the same thing. Everybody's got the same amount of time every single day. So you choose not to do it or you choose to do it. And I think that's a really empowering place to be, because if you then choose to do it, you're fully in control of your own decisions. You're not, I'm a big believer in the fact that you're not that circumstances are a result of your actions and behaviors. You're not a victim of your own circumstances. So you're fully in control of your life. And if you prioritize your health and fitness, then you will find the time to do it. So I think there's definitely an element of mindset and reframe that you can reflect upon yourself. If you ever find yourself in a position where you're saying, I haven't got time for X, Y, or Z, just reframe it mentally and just say to yourself, I'm not prioritizing X, Y, and Z, and just see how that makes you feel.
Yeah.
And if you're happy with that and comfortable with it, absolutely fine. If it makes you think, actually, I should be prioritizing X, Y, and Z, maybe you'll start to make some changes. And when you start to make some changes, particularly around health and fitness, that's when you can realize that it should be a priority, because it will feed everything else that you've got going on in your life, whether that's relationships, whether it's career, whether it's business, whether it's clarity of thinking, all these other things that you're probably prioritizing above health and fitness are going to get a benefit if you just think about flipping your mindset.
No, I agree. And that makes me think about a conversation I had maybe in the last couple of weeks about somebody, it was a throwaway comment, and I'm thinking about what you're talking about, rephrasing it. It's interesting because they'd mentioned, oh yeah, but going to these gyms, like a CrossFit gym or a High Rocks gym, it's like 130, 140, 150 quid a month. That's what they are. And then you go to a PT, and the good ones need to see you twice a week now. You're talking £500 a month all in. And then you supplement in your nutrition, and eating healthy and eating well is obviously not the most cost-effective way of eating. And he just threw out and he said, oh yeah, but it's fucking expensive, isn't it? And I went, well, I think it's a lot more expensive. I don't have the data on this, but I think it's really expensive when you're sick and ill, when you're later on in life. And I haven't regretted spending £1 on my health and fitness at all. And most people don't worry about going out and having some boozy lunches and going out every weekend and spending hundreds of pounds a month on going out, and I think it's about reframing that, isn't it? Is it expensive, or is it actually investing in yourself?
I totally agree with you. And I think there's an element of, well, there's a lot of truth in what you say there, Guy. And there's, if someone was to question the cost of something, then the response should be, well, how much value do you put in it?
Yeah.
How much do you value yourself, and how much are you willing to invest in yourself? The cost is just a number at the end of the day. And I think I've spent tens of thousands of pounds on coaches over the past few years, and I wouldn't be where I wanted to be without that investment. A huge amount of value has been returned to me as an individual through what I've invested in myself, and health and fitness is a huge part of that.
Yeah, no, I agree. What keeps you motivated? Short term, medium term, long term, or just whichever one's more important to you? What keeps you motivated?
That's a really good question, because motivation is fleeting, isn't it? In terms of it comes and it goes, and it's
we've all been there. Even me in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah,
you can hear the wind, and you're like, oh, it's warm in here, But then you need a real short-term motivation to get you out of bed, and everybody's there. But what are your motivations?
It starts from, I'm starting a program with my clients at the minute, which is around personal strategy and personal culture.
Yes.
And I think if you've got a personal strategy in place, it starts with a vision and a why. And if you've got a bigger picture why that you are aiming towards, and a direction and a North Star direction of travel, then it can help you through those periods where you're struggling to find the motivation to get going and doing the do. A lot of, let's be honest, a lot of the training required to do specific events and specific endeavors can be boring, specifically if you're doing endurance events. And I've done a lot of endurance events over my time. I've spent hours on the bike, hours running, hours in the swimming pool, quite often on my own as well. But always having that bigger picture view of why I'm doing this has really helped me through those periods where motivation is down. Don't get me wrong, sometimes I'm highly motivated to do all my sessions. If the sun is shining, I'm feeling fresh, the road looks perfect, there's nothing more than I enjoy than going out on my bike, or going out for a run, or going for a swim. or going to the gym and lifting some weights, but that's not all the time. So I think the question around motivation is give yourself a bigger picture why, look at your vision, what direction are you going in, and then have a personal strategy around that, and building in health, fitness and well-being into your own personal strategy. And within that, then you start to think about, okay, what are the individual actions and tactics that I need to execute on consistently to enable me to deliver against my goal. So when you're laying in bed in the morning, you can hear the wind outside, you can hear the rain going sideways against the window. That's your reason why to get out of bed and do it, and being consistent and disciplined in those moments where motivation is just non-existent. So, you know, your question around how do you keep motivated? I'm not always motivated to do it. Sometimes I have to rely on consistency and discipline to do it. But, you know, the end goal is to hit the vision. It's not necessarily to get out of bed every single day. So I think I reflect quite a lot on motivation, and I don't think anybody has motivation every single day to do what they need to do. I think sometimes you've got to rely on what your bigger picture why is, and you've got to rely on discipline and consistency.
Yeah, nice. I like it. Both of our wives are going to go through some tough motivation periods, aren't they? Their first marathon. That's going to bite in Jan and Feb, isn't it? You know, when those, well, I've never done a marathon, but you'll know when that starts creeping towards like 30, 35K on a Sunday morning, and it's grim and it's cold. They're going to have to bite in, aren't they, both of them?
I mean, I think so. And I think one of the tactics, again, that I've always deployed when those things happen is just shortening the time between thinking about what you need to do and doing it.
Yeah, you're nice. Yeah.
So if you need to go for a run on a Sunday morning and it is wet and it's cold outside, just being almost trying to get into autopilot mode as soon as you wake up. Don't let that thought process escalate. Get up, get your kit on, get your light on, get out the door as soon as you possibly can. And usually what happens within sort of 2 or 3K of you getting into a run, your body's warmed up, you're in the zone, you're getting the positive feedback from your body, your thought process is starting to get clear, and you actually get an even bigger buzz that half an hour ago you're in bed. Most people are probably still in bed.
It's depending on how early it is on a Sunday morning. Some people are still coming in, aren't they, from the night before if you're running around the city. Yeah, I know.
Well, I've been there, and it's you know, those periods where I've struggled a little bit in the morning, that's really helped me. Don't dwell on it. Get up, get your kit on, and get out. And I can guarantee within a few K, you're already in the zone of enjoying it. You've got your flow state on. You're listening to some music. You've got a podcast on, and you're running with a big smile on your face.
Yeah, I know. That's a common theme for you and I, our conversation. Smile on your face when you're running today.
Yeah.
We've all had setbacks.
Yes. Yeah.
What enables you to, and it might just be the motivation, might be some of the themes that you've been speaking about, but was there a time where you fell off track? And if there was, how did you get back on? And you have spoken about being in the glory of being Mr. Iron Man. And have you got the Iron Man tattoo, by the way?
I've got, it's on my back actually. Yeah, I've got it on my back. Yeah.
Nice, I like it. I don't know if I've ever met anybody that's done an Iron Man that doesn't have the tattoo.
No. One of my good friends falls into that category, but only because he's scared of needles.
Yeah, he's got consistent every week. He gets a henna one. Yeah.
But yeah, it's not.
You might have spoken about it already, but falling off track and getting back on.
It's hard. I mean, nothing's ever linear in life, is it? And I think if you're on a fitness journey or you're on a journey in your career or in business, I think you have to accept that it's never going to be a linear process. Relating it back to health and fitness, of course, I've had loads of setbacks. This year I did I got my PB in my Ironman in Barcelona this year. However, it was supposed to be last year that I did the event, and I came off my bike. I think it was maybe 4 before the event in the Lake District. I was concussed. It took me probably 3 or 4 months or longer to get back on my bike because psychologically it really affected me. I had to defer the event. I went into a bit of a dark place for a few weeks as a result of that. Again, going back to our conversation earlier, the bigger picture why kicks in. Am I going to let this define my destiny, or am I going to write the ending to this story in the way that I intended it to be? So of course I'm going to take control of this situation. What can I do now to make sure that I'm going to hit my goal? So deferred the event for 12 months, got back on the bike when I felt ready. I got into my disciplined training routine. And, you know, I think what I would say at the end of the day, guys, that feeling that I had when I completed the Ironman in Barcelona this year was probably even more rewarding than what it would have been had I have done it the previous year, simply because it was a deferred event. I couldn't do it the year I intended to do it, but I came back a year later and performed to a level which I was unbelievably happy with. So I think there's always going to be setbacks. I think it's just accepting that up front and knowing that up front is part of the challenge. Never aim for perfection. If you're aiming for perfection, then you're going to be disappointed, and you're not going to make yourself vulnerable in many ways. I think perfection is in many ways, perfection is a way of masquerading vulnerability. Know that you're not going to get to perfect, accept it, know there's going to be challenges along the way, embrace it. Don't label it as negative or bad, just accept it for what it is, and come up with a plan that is within your control to kind of execute as best you possibly can. I'm nowhere near an elite athlete at all. I'm just someone who likes challenging myself, and there's always going to be setbacks. And I think what I would say as well, guys, that the learnings that you can take from that is something that can be applied in any areas of your life, whether it's business, whether it's career, whether it's parenting, whether it's a relationship. If you set yourself up for failure by aiming for perfection and thinking this is going to be an easy ride, then I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news that it's not going to happen. I'm going through exactly the same. I'm a new business owner now, and I'm taking that mindset into my business. I know there's going to be challenges. I know it's going to be ups. I know there's going to be downs. I know that I'm going to be on the emotional roller coaster, but I'm accepting of it, and I'm going to deal with it as we go.
Yeah, no, that endurance mindset. And when somebody spoke to me about getting into high rocks, they said, I think you really enjoy it because you've never done this type of all-round hybrid training before. Never really done any running. I said to you, first 10K I ever did was this year. He said, but knowing you as I know you, about owning the business and enjoying even the small little parts of it and the shitty jobs that I don't really enjoy doing, we've all got those, right? The parts of your job. He said, I think you'll really enjoy just chipping away at getting better and better and better at your running, at the different disciplines within high rocks, but then the wider sort of functional fitness element. It's definitely taught me an awful lot about, well, the business prepared me, I guess, for the ups and downs of, I don't want to say my athletic journey, but I guess that's a version of what it is, you know, the everyday athlete. Yeah. But definitely prepared myself for when I couldn't do the Warrington half marathon in September. I was really chilled about it because it wasn't, doing that Warrington half marathon was a part of the plan. Like you said before, it wasn't the end goal. It wasn't, that's not what I'm trying to, I want to be fitter, healthier, and be hard to kill in later life. That Warrington half marathon doesn't matter at all.
Yeah.
So I never got upset about it.
Yeah, it's all part of the bigger picture.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. A few more questions. The first one, you can think about for a little bit if you want. It's a three-pronged approach.
Okay.
What does health mean to you? What does fitness mean to you? And what does wellness mean to you? Because those three words have been put together now into like an industry. Health, fitness, and wellness. What do they?
Wow, yeah. I think I think if you drew a Venn diagram of that, you'd probably get a lot of overlap there, right? And you know, a lot of my coaching centers around positive psychology, and I think what you've described probably relates to some of the research that I think it's Martin Siegelman did. He's a psychologist, and he did a model based around wellness, which was the PERMA model: positive emotions, engagements, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. That's the PERMA model of well-being. And I think when you talk about fitness, health, and wellness, they all kind of mash into that model in some ways. So for me, it falls under the bracket of well-being and what human beings aspire for to make them happy. And I think health, wellness, and fitness give me all of that in abundance. It gives me positive emotions. It gives me engagement. It gives me relationships. It gives me meaning in many ways. And also, let's not shy away from the fact that it gives me accomplishment as well. You know, if you and all human beings need that. You know, if I set myself a goal, of course, I'm going to feel brilliant about myself if I achieve it. And why shouldn't I? An accomplishment is a basic human need when you think about how to go after happiness and fulfillment. And the great thing about things like High Rocks are it is competitive to a degree. You compete with yourself and you compete with others in your age group. It's exactly the same with triathlon. It's exactly the same if you're running a ultra marathon and you just want to finish it. You know, you get that feeling of accomplishment when you've done it. So I think it all wraps under the same sort of umbrella term for me, health, fitness and well-being. It's just one thing, and it's probably a big homogenous blob, which is probably not the response that you were looking for, because I don't think I can segment it as perfectly as you had.
No. Listen, the answers to that question have been absolutely fascinating. We did have a lady on who'd had a couple of masters in within the health, fitness and wellness space, and she broke it down. She was like, well, according to this textbook, boom, 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 boom. It was amazing. For most people, absolutely, they've got sort of an answer where it's all sort of merged in. And for most business owners, and it's the why behind, you know, certainly the events part of my business, but most business owners don't prioritize their health and fitness. I've met loads of them, particularly over the past 4.5 years, and they just don't do it. For those watching this that want to take that step, or they're thinking about prioritizing it, what is the one bit of advice that you would give to help get them going?
I think to be honest with you, simplification is probably the main thing, Guy. And I think there's so much information out there when you think about, you know, fitness, health, well-being, whether it's nutritional advice, whether it's should I be looking to lose weight, should I be looking to build strength, should I be looking to run more, you know, do I need to be drinking more water? There's so much information out there that it can be overwhelming. I think when you get overwhelmed with something, quite often the outcome is that you end up doing nothing, right? So you end up just procrastinating, and you don't end up making any progress. So for anyone who's looking to start their journey, I would say simplification is probably the ultimate starting point. Simplify it down to a plan. Maybe set yourself a really achievable goal that you can go after, and work back. What are the demands of the event? If it's a 5K, if it's a 10K, what does it take to do it? And then work up a simple plan to get you there, which could start with just doing a minimum amount of steps a day.
Is that what you would say? Would you say go and book an event, book a 10K, go and book a half marathon, go and book a High Rocks? Or
I think
that's that you would give.
I think that could give. I think it has to be individual to the person, Guy. But I think, in my experience as an individual and with some people that I've worked with, giving them the activation energy to move is booking the event. So it's accountability to yourself that it's booked. Some people even put a financial value on it. I have spent 50, 60, 70, £100 on this event, therefore I'm doing it. Some people are motivated by that. So whatever gives you that activation energy to move and do something is personal to you. But what I would say is the principle is the same. Keep it simple. Just keep it simple. Even if you can't run 1K or 2K, or it doesn't matter. You can get out and you can walk 5,000 steps a day. And then the next week you can walk 7,000 steps a day, then 10,000. Then you might be able to run 2,000. There's a starting point there for everybody. It doesn't matter how small it is. It doesn't matter how, you know, much other people are doing around you. There's always a route to start, and there's so much information out there. It can be overwhelming, and I can understand why people don't start, because they just complicate things too much.
No, awesome. No, really appreciate it. And you're going to come and do a bit of a talk, aren't you, at one of our events in February?
I'm looking forward to it. I've never been to the farm club, actually. I've heard lots about it.
Place.
I'm going to come and see you guys there in Feb. I can't wait for that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Get you in Pickmere Lake. I remember when I was there, something we could probably talk about off. It might scare people off coming to the event, but I'll go for it anyway whilst we're recording. So I've been in quite a few ice baths, and it's definitely part of my plan next year is to do 2 or 3 a week. I haven't done that for the last 6 months, but I've got one, and since we moved house, it's still like in a shed. But I've been building them back in, and normally they're around like 5-6 degrees, something like that. When I went to the farm club for the first time, my wife's been several times. I went for the first time. They said, "Pick me a lake. It's a lovely 10 degrees today." And I was like, piece of piss. That is a different level. Either they were kidding to help people mentally get into it, or being in that lake is a different cold than being in a bath. It will. Have you done ice baths before?
Not lots of them, but I have done a couple.
Yeah, well, yeah, going into the lake with a it's a unique experience. Certainly is a unique experience. So yeah, I look forward to partaking in that with you.
I can't wait, and I have done a fair bit of open water swimming in my time.
Oh, of course you have. Well, you've got the wetsuit on though, right?
The wetsuit does make a difference, but there has been occasions. I remember I know we spoke about Ullswater, I think.
Yes.
I did a triathlon in Ullswater a few years ago, and on that occasion, I just couldn't cope with the water. I had a real tough race, and you shouldn't underestimate it. So anyone who's kind of getting into open water, whether they've got a wetsuit on or not, for the first time, I'd done multiple triathlons before that event, but on that one occasion, it just did not agree with me. So that's the negative side of it, or the challenging side of it. On the positive side of it, there is nothing better than connecting with nature in open water. And specifically when you're doing cold water therapy and you're kind of learning how to breathe and control yourself through breathing, it's so powerful for the mind. So I'm looking forward to experiencing some of that with you, Guy.
And they've got all of that as well, that cold water, that breathing and everything. You do some like sound yoga for a couple of hours before it, and it's just so good. And then by the time you get in there, though, well, I forgot all about it. I'm like, okay. But I think it's because in my head, it was like 10 degrees just waving in, like this. And then I was like, whoa, this is a different world. But yeah, it'll be great to see you there anyway. Thank you for your time today. Appreciate it.
No, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Cheers, Dave.